Alright, so this is going to be my video about a potential Spider-Man Brand New Day plot leak. I found this on Reddit and I went through it and I just kind of wanted to cover my ideas about it. Alright, so part one says after No Way Home, Peter's basically a ghost. Peter spends all his time as Spider-Man saving the city. Peter narrates a confession to MJ, only to himself, and believes she's better off without him. Same with Ned. Big themes of loneliness and isolation. Part 2 says there's a quick montage scene of Peter beating up mid-villains including Boomerang, Tarantula, Ramrod, Chameleon, and Rhino. New York loves Spider-Man, except for damage control, as they view him as something they have to manage. And Peter is avoiding his real life, only focusing on being Spider-Man. Part 3 says the montage ends with Peter having problems with his powers. The more stress Peter gets, the more unstable his powers get, and his webbing starts to turn organic at times, and he gets more aggressive and his body starts changing. I guess some of this, especially the first part, is something that's been rumored for quite some time. Um, Now, the second part, um, yeah, Boomerang, Tarantula, and Ramrod, that was kind of all confirmed by the comic book covers that the director had hanging on his wall. And then there was that leaked trailer that I know at least shows Peter swinging away from Boomerang, almost recreating the comic book cover. Um, then yeah, as far as Rhino goes, there were some reports when they were filming that convoy scene that some people saw Rhino's head on set, but as far as I know, no one ever got like pictures or footage of the Rhino's head. Um, but according to this, that's real. And then Chameleon, that's an interesting one because before this, I've never heard any rumors about Chameleon being in this. Um, yeah, and then we were supposed to get Chameleon way back in Far From Home. There was the Dimitri character, and I remember when he was announcing that actor was announcing that he was in the movie, he did hashtag like Dimitri, hashtag the chameleon. So I don't I don't know if that was exactly the plans, because of course that movie came out and he was like not really that important of a character at all. He just worked for Nick Fury. So, and then I'm not sure this if this is Chameleon, if that's going to be the same character, because I really don't know why that character would be a villain now, but I don't know. And it seems weird to skip over and just a montage that, oh, by the way, became a villain. So, um, and then yeah, Chameleon's also interesting because, of course, um, Sony ended up using him in the Craven the Hunter movie in the Venomverse. Um, but if he is in the MCU, that of course lays the groundwork for his half brother Craven to show up. And Ryan Coogler actually wanted Craven the Hunter in the first Black Panther movie, so but Sony blocked that. I'm guessing so they could do the Craven the Hunter movie. But yeah, so if he is in this, that's you know we've got potential to see him and Craven again, but now in the MCU. Then the next part I kind of don't really understand. So New York loves him, but Damage Control sees him as something they have to manage. Um, that seems odd to me because, of course, they have to manage him because he is a superhero, but that's like their job. That's the whole reason they exist is to clean up after, superheroes and supervillains battle. So I don't know if they're. I know they're toying around with damage control being like an evil or kind of scummy organization because um, they've pretty much for most of their appearances in No Way Home and Miss Marvel are more antagonists because I don't really think they were that bad in Homecoming when they were originally introduced. I mean, depends on your point of view because obviously the Toombs and his gang they were bad, but they were kind of just there doing their jobs. Um, and then there were reports that Damage Control were supposed to be antagonists in the Armor Wars project, which we never get, and then they were going to be responsible for messing with technology and then bringing back Ultron. So, so yeah, it's just odd that they have this noted that they're annoyed they have to clean up after Spider-Man, but they have to clean up after all of them. So unless they all just hate the job, I don't know. Um, avoiding his life, focusing on Spider-Man. Yeah, that's been rumored. Then Peter has problems with his powers. The more stress he gets. Yeah, I'll get to the next part. But yeah, some of this lines up with some of the other rumors we've seen on part of the leaked trailer. So part four, um, Sadie Sink plays Jean Grey, who's on the run because Damage Control believes she's an unregistered mutant with uncontrolled powers. Jean's goal is to stay free and expose Damage Control. Jean sees Spider-Man as reckless. Whenever he appears, the situation gets worse. She suspects Damage Control will connect her to Spider-Man and use that as an excuse to hunt her. Punisher protects Jean because they work together. Part 5 says Tombstone is essentially the big bad. He wants the city unstable because he profits when the streets are scared. Tombstone bankrolls the Hand to attack Damage Control and free Scorpion. Damage Control is transporting Matt Gargan to a more secure location, and that is apparently the convoy scene. The Hand attacks the convoy on the highway while Spider-Man comes to fight them off. Punisher helps too, and Damage Control crashes at a prison where Gargan escapes. All right, so Sadie Sink playing Jean Grey, that's been a rumor that's been going around for quite some time. There are currently rumors, more associated with Avengers Doomsday since um, at least the first two teasers and the post-credit scene for um, the Fantastic Four First Steps deals with some of the heroes' children. So there have been theories that maybe she's not Jean Grey and she's actually going to be Rachel Summers, the daughter of Jean Grey and Cyclops. Um, but then it's kind of odd to me that this says Damage Control believes she's an unregistered mutant. Because that implies that they're registering mutants, which is something I completely new. The only thing this reminds me of is like WandaVision, um, where you had Sword, and there was a scene where they showed some Sword files on a computer, and one of them was named, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but if you look that name up, it was an alias that was used by John Wraith in the comics. John Wraith in the movies was played by Will.i.am in X-Men Origins Wolverine. So there's that connection that Sword might have files on mutants, but I'm not really sure where this registration comes from. Like, is it something completely new, or I I thought they got rid of the Sokovia Accords. I could be wrong. I don't remember exactly on that, but yeah, it just seems odd that they're hunting unregistered mutants. Um she's trying to stay free from Damage Control. Yeah, whenever she's around Spider-Man things get worse. That kind of makes sense, or at least from her point of view, it's that unwanted team up sort of thing. Then the next part where it says damage control will connect her to Spider-Man and use that as an excuse to hunt her, that kind of doesn't make sense to me because the, this leak already said they're hunting her, so why are they using Spider-Man as an excuse if she's already an unregistered mutant with uncontrolled powers? That seems like they already have their excuse. So that seems odd to me. And then this also is kind of odd to me. Frank and Jean working together. Um, this leak really doesn't get into why they're working with each other and how long it's been. This kind of, if true, seems interesting. Like, will this connect to the Punisher special presentation, which I believe is supposed to come out before Brand New Day? So is she gonna have like a surprise cameo in that? And yeah, it's just an odd team up for me. Punisher and potentially Jean Grey or any telepath. Um, yeah, and it's just weird that this doesn't cover like why they're together. Like it's not just like Frank runs into people and wants to team up all the time. So I don't know. Then Tombstone. Um, yeah. So this kind of means that Tombstone was one of Gargan's friends he was talking about in that post-credit scene of Homecoming that wanted Spider-Man out of the way. Um, and then yeah, it's pretty cool to have the hand back. We saw them in the leaked trailer. Um, so it'd be interesting to see now how Marvel Studios is handling the hand, taking them over from Marvel Television. Uh, and then it's kind of interesting why Tombstone wants to free Gargan. Like, is this somewhat implying that maybe Toombs talked about Peter's real identity? But then again, that raises the question, you have the spell, so it would have erased their memories even if he did talk. Um, so it's kind of interesting, especially it's this, I guess, don't know how far after No Way Home this takes place, but yeah, it's kind of interesting why it's potentially been a long time that Gargan's been in prison and they're just now breaking him out for some reason because that's I mean, it kind of, the sleep kind of gets into it, but not a real reason to break him out. But then yeah, there were scenes like photos of Gargan in a helicopter from behind the scenes. Uh, everyone's pretty much seen the convoy fight scene that was being filmed, and then there was a set photo of um, seemingly a prison with the military vehicle crashed into it with people in damage control uniforms. So that's was already leaked and confirmed to be real. All right, part 7. After the disaster, the Hand storms the prison to release more prisoners. This is where Spider-Man fights a wave of ninjas in the prison. Spidey has problems with his powers again, but Punisher saves him from the Hand and they retreat. Part 8 says after the prison chaos, Peter's body isn't acting normal anymore. Banner is the only person who can help. Peter's body forces a metamorphosis and ends up in a web cocoon. Peter's emotions are causing this organic webbing occurs, more feral, and extra limbs come and go. Part 9 says Tombstone upgrades Gargan and sends Scorpion at Spider-Man to get rid of him for interfering with his business. There's an amazing fight scene across streets and buildings of New York, but Spider-Man wins. Peter becomes unstable and in pain again, which lets Scorpion escape. So, if this is true, I like small cameos, especially if they're like really minor villains that you really won't care about. Like if they're just there to help expand the universe, but there's no way they're gonna be main villains of movies. I think the prison break would be a pretty cool scene if they had some cameos that are like very minor Spider-Man villains, like I don't know, Armada or Ringer, or just some very Z-list characters to show up. Um, then him fighting the Hand was in the leak trailer. They fight. Then he has those problems. He goes to Banner. Um, yeah, and I'm guessing that has to do with they're going to relate somewhat the gamma radiation to the radioactive spider thing. The cocoon was, I believe, shown in the leak trailer. Um, and yeah, he's turning more and more into Man Spider, which we'll get to. Um, and then yeah, this is like the basically what this leak says is the reason he broke Gargan out is just to upgrade him and send him after Spider-Man, which I feel like there needs to be a bigger reason there, like because Tombstone could have just probably had some other guy, suit up and go after Spider-Man instead of wasting the time and money to go break a guy out of prison. So that's kind of what interests me is what's going on with that. It doesn't seem like that great of a reason. Um, yeah, and then that raised the question for me is like, where is Tombstone getting this stuff to upgrade from? Like, did he end up finding the Tinkerer because um, I believe the Tinkerer was still free by the end of Homecoming, so he could go find work anywhere else since Vulture and the Shocker and Gargan were all sent to jail. So I'm guessing that. I know years ago on a different YouTube channel um, I made a video about a potential Easter egg in Homecoming where it seemed like if you look in one of the scenes at the beginning of Homecoming, you maybe saw like the pointed part of Scorpion's tail amongst the Tinker's stuff. So that's what I figured he was building the suit for him to use eventually, but that was a while ago. Um, yeah, I don't think it's ever been confirmed if that's what that was. Then yeah, Scorpion escapes. Part 10 says Banner's under insane stress from Peter, damage control, and taps into his new personality, Grey Hulk. Banner loses control, which causes Hulk to go crazy and I'm guessing terrorize the streets. Basically, stress and emotional turmoil cause this transformation. Punisher shows up in a tank to fight and try and save Banner. Likewise, Spider-Man joins and attempts to help Banner. Jean returns and calms Banner, bringing him back to normal. Just when Banner is back to normal, Peter's stress is maxed out and reaches a breaking point, causing him to become Man-Spider. Man-Spider loses all human features and fights them. Jean anchors Peter mentally and helps Peter realize that he can't only be Spider-Man, but the human side is just as important. Once he realizes that, he turns back to normal. Bruce finishes the antidote/serum to stabilize Peter's mutation fully, and Jean goes on her way, thanking them for trusting her, and she returns in Secret Wars. Um, there have been rumors about like Bruce being stressed out, but this says it's specifically because of Peter, um, and damage control. But all those rumors before this, separate from this, were saying that Bruce was being stressed out because he hated being the Hulk, and he always feared that there would be other Hulks out there. And of course, since the events of the Incredible Hulk, you've had Abomination, Red Hulk, She Hulk. You had the intelligentsia trying to steal the blood to make more. You had the leader. Um, so it was, and I think there was some plot leaks that ended up being changed, or reportedly they were real, for Brave New World, that was going to have the leader sending out Hulk serums across the world, and there being Hulks running around all over. But this doesn't mention any of that. It just says it's because of Peter and damage control. Um, and the Grey Hulk, um, we also know that during Avengers Age of Ultron, we were actually supposed to get the Grey Hulk. Then that would have happened when Wanda messed with Bruce's mind. He was supposed to turn into the Grey Hulk, but they obviously didn't do that. But we do know that was on the table at Marvel Studios. They were looking for a way to introduce this personality. Um, so this might finally be it. Um, yeah, turmoil. Then we get the Punisher, Spider-Man, Hulk fight scene, and then Jean calms Banner using her powers. Uh, and then Peter turns into Man Spider and attacks them. This is the part that I'm wondering about, because we did get some behind the scenes photos and videos of Banner being hospitalized. Like, he ends up uh, really scarred and he's sent in an ambulance, which is really interesting because, of course, Banner really doesn't get injured when he's the Hulk. Um, but maybe because Jean, or whoever Sadie Sink is playing, um, reverted him, it's got some sort of lasting effect. And so when Peter becomes Man Spider, that's when he hurts him. Not entirely sure about that, because this leak doesn't talk about Banner being sent to the hospital for injuries. So maybe this is that part. Um, yeah. And then, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. It's just odd that they're going to have a telepath. It seems like an easy way out of both of them and their anger issues and stuff. Um, yeah, I don't know, but that's just my personal opinion. Of course, have to wait to see if this is real or anything. And then Jean goes on her way and thanks them, and she returns in Secret Wars. So we already know, yeah, it was reported by, I forget, it was already reported by a legitimate news source that she would be returning in Secret Wars. So that's true. Which is, of course, is people have been using as a clue that she has to be someone important, that they would bring her back for potentially the biggest Avengers movie to date. Um, but then it's kind of odd that seemingly this just says she gets up and leaves. Like, it doesn't give any resolution to, why she was there. Like, why was she teamed up with Frank? Is Frank leaving with her, or what's going on there? She just, I don't know. It just doesn't resolve exactly what her storyline is or what Frank's storyline is. So that's kind of odd to me. Then part 13. Finally, Peter finds MJ and her boyfriend, who we find out is Harry Osborn. He tells her everything that happened from No Way Home, the narration from the beginning of the movie. Peter understands he can't just be Spider Man, but Peter Parker is just as important. Ned appears too. Then the last part, the post credit scene includes the symbiote. Tombstone meets an unknown buyer in a quiet, dark hangout. The buyer slides a sealed vial across the table. Inside is the symbiote. Tombstone looks at Scorpion, hinting at Matt Gargan getting the symbiote first. All right. So for this first part, this is probably the biggest red flag about this leak, at least to me, is MJ having Harry as her boyfriend, because in No Way Home it was mentioned by Norman when he teleported into the MCU that he went looking for Harry and Oscorp and he never found them, suggesting that there is no Osborn family or Oscorp in the MCU. That's a huge difference. So right there, it's kind of weird how she has a boyfriend. So unless they're saying Norman lied, which he could have, but also that means like Peter never bothered to look into any of the villains to see if they had variants in the MCU, which I guess he doesn't have to, but I would think he might be somewhat curious to see if he could prevent them from becoming villains in the MCU, if he knows in other realities they became villains. And that's kind of something I always bring up whenever I talk about like your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, is when Marvel was talking about that show, they said, well, it's basically the MCU up until the point of Civil War, and instead of Tony becoming the mentor, it's Norman. And then that raises the question to me is like, well, then how can it be the same as the MCU up to that point if, Norman has been around for, I don't know, at least 40 years or so? So that's like at least a 40 years difference. If then even further back, depending how far you actually want to take it realistically to look in the history of the Osborn family. But that was always my problem with that simplified explanation of your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, is that it really can't be entirely that similar. Um, but yeah, and then this kind of reiterates that Peter again learns that he kind of has to balance both lives. And then it seems like Ned's barely in this movie. Um, it seems like MJ really isn't too, which I've heard. Um, there are rumors that Tom and Zendaya basically agreed to the characters splitting up because they are a couple in real life, and they kind of didn't want to do it on screen. Like, let's let's be a real couple, and then let's go pretend to be a couple on screen. And they kind of wanted to, have more freedom acting wise to be like, okay, but you're not just going to use our real life relationship for your movies. So that's why I heard they were pushing that they do break up and they have other love interests during the movies and shows. Um, but then the post credit scene, um, yeah, and they say there's an unknown buyer, so I don't know if they literally mean it's gonna be a mystery in the movie, like we're not gonna see who it is, or maybe it's this person claiming they just don't know who it is. Otherwise, they would have told us. But yeah, I don't know if they're gonna introduce a mystery. I'm guessing seller and not really a buyer. Like now before the events of Doomsday and Secret Wars. I mean, they could. We know that Feige did a interview recently where he was asked about some of the unresolved plot lines of like all the movies, before Secret Wars and stuff, and they were like, "Are we gonna get answers to all of those?" And he said that some would be answered, some might take years, like it took to do the leader's story from the Incredible Hulk to Brave New World. And then he did say there were some storylines that they just would never do. So I'm guessing those, they're gonna use the excuse of the Secret Wars reboot to just end those stories there and not take them any further. So basically, my point there is when he says it could take years to cover some, or maybe soon. Um, I guess they could introduce some unknown seller and then just pay that off in um, Spider-Man 5 or something. I think it would kind of be cool if they did revealed it was the power broker, because that way you can finally address that storyline a bit. Just give her something else to do to actually show, all the shady stuff she's been doing, and it's not just a one-off and then we're never addressing it again. Um, so yeah, and it's cool. There were rumors, people saying we weren't going to get the symbiote because um of how the No Way Home post credit scenes seem very similar to the beginning of Venom: The Last Dance. And we already saw, if you watch the beginning of that, the way Eddie gets teleported back to his universe is different than like how Vulture got teleported to that universe. Like they very clearly, I don't know what happened there, that they couldn't use the same special effects um from like Doctor Strange's spell to teleport him back. They had to use the portal that was also used by I forget, the aliens that worked for Null, the Hunt Venom. So there was some question there that, you know, maybe, because I think that happened after another Marvel and Sony fallout. So people thought maybe Sony was taking the Venom symbiote away and they were going to retcon that. But this seems to indicate that they're not retconning that. Um, and then hinting Scorpion was going to get it first. The actor playing Scorpion did post at least like two pictures from the comics where Gargan had the symbiote, so he's been teasing that a little. But the other interesting thing about that would kind of imply that Gargan would be coming back in, I'm guessing, Secret Wars, because there's a lot of talk that, um, you know, MCU Spider-Man won't be in Doomsday, or he'll just have a quick cameo. Um, so, and that would of course set up, like the image they have there is Peter getting the symbiote during the original Secret Wars comics. So I think that would have to imply Gargan gets it and he shows up on Battle World, and then somehow Peter ends up getting it. And that there have been rumors that Doctor Doom's going to have his own Avengers team during Doomsday or Secret Wars. So I wonder if they're going to do like Doom's Dark Avengers, because in the comics during the Dark Avengers story, Gargan had the symbiote and he was basically pretending to be their version of Spider-Man for the team. So yeah, that's the only thing that kind of makes sense as far as that goes. Um, yeah. So I think overall it kind of sounds like a cool plot and something they want to do, because a lot of the, Man Spider and the Punisher stuff is actually from the uh 90s, I think 94 Spider-Man the Animated Series. And then of course you got Scorpion and Tombstone. Um Makes it seem kind of like, the plot of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man a bit. So it's like they're combining the two shows. Um, and it was a pretty cool storyline, so it kind of makes sense why they'd adapt that. But yeah, so while all this sounds pretty cool, uh, yeah, just that really the Harry Osborn thing really throws it off for me, and it raises a few questions that kind of don't make any sense. So, yeah, that's kind of the weird thing, is that this does cover a lot of this leaked stuff. So, of course, that stuff will be real. But yeah, there's just the other stuff, missing the Bruce going to the hospital thing and then having Harry, even though it was established that he wasn't in the MCU, and now he is. But yeah, so that's just my thoughts on it. Um, yeah, so I guess let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Like, subscribe, um, and I might have another potential plot leak video coming out for Avengers Doomsday sometime soon. So yeah, thanks for watching.